You missed another one of Tyler's games last night. My name is Samuel Reed, and I'm 45 years old. For nearly 2 decades now, I've been working with heavy equipment at Hologate Systems in Kansas City. I started right out of high school, fresh-faced and eager, climbing into a crane cab before I was even old enough to rent a car. Through years of long shifts, blistering summers, and freezing winters, I clawed my way up until I was running entire crews. Now I'm the site supervisor, and half the skyline in this city has my sweat poured into its foundations. But lately, home hasn't felt like home. Something was shifting under the roof I thought was solid. Jessica, my wife, had been changing for months, becoming colder, distant in ways I couldn't quite put into words. When I walked through the door after 12 hours of hauling steel and shouting over engines, it felt like she wasn't even seeing me anymore. Just eyes that looked through me as if I were a stranger passing by. The kids weren't blind to it either. Tyler, 16, full of talent, burning bright on the football field, had stopped meeting my eyes. He used to rush to tell me about his practices, his teammates, his games. Now he barely spoke. My daughter Sophia, 14, spent nearly every evening shut away in her room, earbuds in, walls up. The laughter in the house was fading, replaced by silence I couldn't break. I told you I had to finish the Henderson project, I said one night, slipping my hard hat onto its hook in the kitchen. That contract's too important to risk. Jessica didn't even look up from her phone. Her voice was flat when she said, "Tyler scored the winning goal. Coach thinks a scholarship is possible if he keeps this up." The words sank into me like stones. I hated missing my boys' games, hated that my seat on the sidelines sat empty. But keeping food in the fridge and lights on overhead meant sacrifices. Sacrifices Jessica used to understand. Hell, she used to brag about the work I did. "I'll make it to the next one," I promised. That's when she finally glanced up, but the look in her eyes wasn't anger, wasn't even disappointment. It was something worse. "But, or you?" she asked quietly. That night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling while Jessica slept, turned away from me. The gulf between us stretched wider than the mattress. We hadn't touched in months, hadn't had a real conversation in longer than I could remember. I told myself it was just a rough patch. Marriage had ups and downs. 19 years together was proof we could survive anything, or so I thought. But the very next morning, with coffee half poured into my mug, I caught Jessica whispering on the phone in the laundry room. She hung up the instant she saw me. "Who was that?" I asked. "Work stuff," she said too quickly, refusing to meet my eyes. Jessica worked part-time at a small dental clinic. They didn't call employees at 6 in the morning. I shoved my thermos into my bag and started for the door. "See you tonight," I muttered. "Actually," she said, and my hand froze on the knob. "I'm having dinner with my sister. Don't wait up." Her sister lived 2 hours away in Topeka. Dinner on a Tuesday didn't make sense, but I didn't press it. I walked out, climbed into my truck, and something inside me shifted. For the first time in years, I felt the foundation of my marriage cracking. We had met at the University of Kansas 23 years ago, her chasing dental hygiene, me in construction management before I dropped out junior year to care for my sick father. She'd stood beside me then, through every bill, every sleepless night, every double shift I pulled. We got married young. Tyler came along when I was 26, Sophia 2 years later. Through the storms, we were solid, or at least I believed we were. Jessica knew my hours, knew what the job demanded. When I took the position with Hologate, she supported the move from Lawrence to Kansas City. Every promotion I earned, she celebrated. But somewhere along the way, her pride turned into indifference. She stopped asking about the sites, stopped caring when I came home bone-tired and caked in dust. And then the signs started stacking up. Phone calls cut short the second I walked into a room. New outfits, she swore, came from clearance racks, but carried tags that told another story. A sudden interest in the gym, in her hair, in nights out with friends. One evening, while searching her purse for my reading glasses, I found a receipt dinner for 2 at Romano's downtown. $58. She said it was Lauren's birthday, but Lauren had been living in Wichita for 3 years. The biggest blow came 2 weeks ago. Tyler, trying to sound casual, asked me why Mom was always talking to that man from work. When I pressed, he shut down, eyes darting away. Said he didn't want to. Jessica had even started twisting the kids' view of me, planting little barbs. "Your father's never home," she'd say. "He cares more about buildings than about us." That wasn't the truth. Every hour I bled into Hologate was for them, for the house, the food, the chance at a better life. But Jessica was rewriting our story, turning me into a villain while I wasn't looking. And then came the Thursday that ripped the veil off everything. I left the Henderson site early, ahead of schedule, excited to surprise Tyler by picking him up from football practice. Pulling into our driveway, I spotted a rental sedan parked across the street. Blue, unfamiliar, odd, but not impossible. Inside, voices drifted from the living room. Jessica's laugh, the real one, the one I hadn't heard in months. My stomach turned to lead. "The kids will be home soon," she said softly. "I know," a man's voice replied. "I just needed to see you. It's been too long." I froze. I knew that voice. Derek Walsh, Jessica's high school boyfriend. "We can't keep doing this," Jessica said. But her tone was weak, without conviction. "You said you were going to tell him," Derek pressed. "It's been 6 months, Jess. I'm tired of waiting." 6 months. My chest caved in. That was when Jessica's distance began. When the phone calls and new clothes started. When she began poisoning the kids against me. "It's complicated," Jessica murmured. "Samuel's not a bad man. He's just never here. The kids hardly know him anymore." A dagger. Derek's reply was low and sure. "You deserve better. We both know that." I stumbled back, retreating before they noticed. My hands shook on the wheel as I circled the block, waiting for his car to leave. When I came home 20 minutes later, Jessica was in the kitchen stirring pasta like nothing had happened. She smiled that fake smile and asked about my day. I went upstairs without answering, sat on the edge of our bed, and stared at the wedding photo on the dresser. 19 years. 2 kids, a home, a life built brick by brick, and she was ready to throw it all away for a ghost from her past. I didn't rage, didn't accuse, I just sat there, feeling the ground shift beneath me. Then I picked up my phone and dialed James, my old friend, who just so happened to work as a private investigator. 3 weeks after discovering Derek in my living room, I decided to test the waters. James had already provided me with some preliminary evidence. Photos of Jessica and Derek meeting at various restaurants around the city. Records of phone calls, between them dating back 8 months. But I needed to be smart about this. I couldn't just confront Jessica with, I needed her to reveal her hand first. The opportunity came when Shan announced another dinner with her sister in Topeka on a Friday night. "I might stay over," she said, not looking up from her laptop. Drive back Saturday morning. Melissa spent going through a rough time with her divorce. Melissa had been divorced for 3 years. Her rough time was long over. "Sounds good," I said. "I'll take tickets to dinner and a movie." Jessica assumed, surprised by how easily I accepted her story. "Really, you're not going to complain about me being gone? You deserve time with your family," I said. "I'll hold down the fort here." That Friday, I dropped Tyler off at his friend's house for a sleepover and took Sophia to her grandmother's for Then I drove to the parking lot across from the Marriott downtown and waited. Jessica's car arrived at 7 p.m. She walked into the hotel lobby wearing a black dress I'd never seen before. 5 minutes later, Derek's rental car pulled up. He was taller than he remembered from high school, graying at the temples, wearing an expensive suit. They embraced in the lobby like lovers who'd been apart for months, not like old friends catching up. I took pictures, documented everything. Then he went home and waited. Jessica returned Saturday afternoon with stories about Melissa's problems and how exhausting it had been to provide emotional support all night. She even had a gift bag from a boutique in Topeka as proof of her "How was your evening with the?" she asked. "Fine," I said. "When missed?" That Sunday, I decided to push a little harder. Over breakfast, I brought up our financial situation. "I've been thinking," I said, "maybe it's time looked into refinancing the house. Interest rates are good right now." Jessica's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. "Why would we do that?" "Free up some equity. Maybe take a vacation as a family. Tyler will be graduating in 2 years. We should spend more time at Agatha while we can." She sat down her cup and looked at Melika. "I'd suggested we burn the house down." "I don't think that's a good idea," she said carefully. "The mortgage is Phineas, it is. But if we're planning for forfeiture, Gabriel," her voice was I said, "No." The kids looked up from their breakfast, sensing Jessica forced a smile and softened her tone. "We can talk about it later," she said. "But we never did talk about it later." That afternoon, Jessica announced just going to visit a lawyer about updating our wills. Said it wasn't anything responsible couples did. Ik knew better. She wasn't updating our she was preparing for divorce. That evening, after the kids went to I found Jessica on the phone again. This time, I listened from outside the bedroom door. "He's getting suspicious," she was saying. "Today, he wanted to refinance the house like he knows something." Derek's voice was muffled through the phone. Booty caught enough to understand. They weren't just having an affair. They were planning my exit from the family. Derek lived in Denver now. Ran some kind of consulting business. had money, could provide Jessica with the lifestyle she apparently felt she deserved. "I need more time," Jessica said. "I want to make sure I get custody in the house. Samuel might fight for the kids if he thinks he has a chance. The house we'd bought, the kids I'd raised from." She was planning to take everything and paint me as the absent father who'd never been there for his. I went downstairs and poured myself a beer, my first drink in months, and I called James and told him to accelerate the investigation. James's full report arrived the following Wednesday, and it was worse than I'd imagined. Jessica and Derek hadn't just reconnected 6 months ago. They'd been in contact on and off for 3 years. Social media messages, emails, occasional phone calls whenever Derek was in town for business. The affair had started in earnest last spring when Derek moved his consulting firm to Kansas City. He'd rented an apartment downtown just 15 minutes from our house, the same downtown where I was building the Tennyson project. Ironically enough, but the most damaging revelation came from Derek's financial records, which James had obtained through contacts in Denver. Derek wasn't just planning to support Jessica after our divorce. He'd already been doing it. The new clothes, the expensive dinners, even the community college classes Jessica had been taking. Derek was footing the bill for everything. There were bank records showing regular transfers from Derek's account to a credit card Jessica had opened without my knowledge, thousands of dollars over the past 8 months, money she'd been spending while letting me believe we were struggling financially while I worked overtime and weekends to keep us afloat. The private investigator had also uncovered something else. Jessica had already consulted with a divorce attorney. Not just consulted, she'd retained him, a high-powered family law specialist who specialized in maximizing settlements for spurned wives. The attorney's name was William Ricks, and according to James' research, his strategy was always the same: paint the husband as an absent, uncaring father who'd neglected his family for work, then push for full custody and maximum alimony based on their husband's earning potential. Jessica had been setting me up for months, building a case against me with every Mercedna. Every weekend I worked, every time she criticized me in front of Tyler and Sophia, she was creating a narrative that would justify taking everything. The most trenching part was discovering Thatch been coaching the kids. James had copies of text messages between Jessica and her sister, Melissa, discussing how to help the children understand that their father prioritized work over family. How to document instances of my neglect. Fourth custody hearing. Tyler's sudden distance made sense. Now Sophia's withdrawal. They weren't just picking up on tension between their parents. They were being systematically turned against me by their own mother. But James had saved worst for last. Derek Walsh wasn't just a successful consultant. He was married, had been for 15 years. His wife lived in Denver with their 2 children, completely unaware that her husband was financing another woman's divorce in Kansas City. Derek was playing both sides, promising Jessica a future editor while maintaining his own family as a backup plan. And Jessica was either too blind to see it or too desperate to care. I set down the report and walked out tummy truck. For 20 minutes I just sat there in the driveway, staring at the house I'd thought was my home. Through windows of my children's bedrooms, the front door I'd painted 3 years ago on a weekend when Jessica had complained it looked shabby. Everything I'd worked for, everything I'd built was about to be stolen from me by the woman I'd loved for more than half my life. But I wasn't going to let that happen, not without a fight. I pulled out my phone and called my own attorney, not some divorce specialist but the family lawyer who'd handled my father's estate. Robert Heiss was honest, thorough, and had no patience for games. "Robert," I said when he answered, "I need to see you tomorrow and bring your toughest contract lawyer with you." But Hayes listened to my story without occasionally taking notices. I laid out James' evidence across his conference table. The photos, the financial records, the communication logs between Jessica and Derek. "This is comprehensive," he said finally. "Your wife has definitely been planning this for some time. But the good news is she's made several crucial mistakes." He pointed to the bank record showing Derek's payments to Jessica's secret credit card. "This is dissipation of marital assets," Robert explained. "She's been using money from an undisclosed rations to finance a lifestyle you were unaware of. That alone could significantly impact any settlement." "What about custody?" I asked. That was my biggest fear. The evidence of parental alienation is strong. Those text messages between your wife and her sister discussing how to document your supposed neglect, that's going to backfire on her badly. Judges don't look kindly on parents who manipulate a children against the other parent. Robert's associate, a sharp woman named Patricia Voss, leaned forward. "We need to be strategic about timing. If your wife has already retained Ricks, she's probably planning to file soon. We need to file first and control the narrative. What do you mean? We file for divorce based on adultery and request temporary custody, Patricia explained. Then we present all this evidence in our initial. Put your wife on the defensive from day one instead of letting her paint you as the villain. Robert nodded. We also need to address the financial. If Derek Walsh is married, his wife deserves to know what her husband has been doing with their money. That could complicate his ability to support your wife's legal strategy. Over the next 2 weeks, we prepared our case meticulously. James continued surveillance, documenting Jessica's meetings with Derek and her visits to Henry. Robert and Patricia crafted a filing that laid out every detail of Jessica's deception and financial misconduct. The most important element was protecting my relationship with Tyler and Sophia. Robert suggested we request a mediation to address that alienation issue with a counselor to evaluate her children's statements about their home life. Your wife has been poisoning them against you, Patricia said. But kids are smarter than adults. Give them credit. If a professional counselor asks right questions, the truth will come out. Meanwhile, I had to continue living in the house with Jessica, pretending I didn't know about her affair or her legal plans. It was the hardest acting job of my life. Coming home every evening and making small talk with the woman who was systematically destroying your family. But I used the time to I started spending more deliberate time with Tyler and Sophia, asking about their lives, their friends, their plans for the future. I made Soreto be present for every conversation, every homework session, every ride to practice. Jessica noticed the change and seemed nervous about it. You're home early again, she said one evening when I arrived in time for dinner. The Henderson project is running ahead of schedule, I said. I want to enjoy this time with the family before we start their next big contract. Tyler looked up from his homework. Are you going to be around more, Dad? I'm going to try, I said, meeting his eyes. I know I've been working to muck. I want to change that. Jessica's face went pale. Her whole strategy depended on me being the absent father. If I was suddenly present and engaged, her narrative fell apart. That night I heard her on the phone with Derek again, but this time her voice was panicked. Something's changed, she whispered. He's acting different. What if I filed for divorce on a Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. just as Jessica was dropping Sophia off at school. By that time she returned home. A process server was waiting in our driveway with papers that would change everything. I was at Henderson job site when she called, her voice shaking with rage and panic. What the hell is this, Samuel? You filed for divorce. I did, I said calmly, stepping away from my crew. I'm done pretending, Jess. Pretending what? I don't understand. Derek Walsh, I said, and the line went silent. 8 months of secret credit card payments. Your meetings with Will. Should I continue? When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. How long have you known? Long enough to document everything. The financial fraud, the parental alienation, the adultery, it's all in filing. Samuel, please, we can work this out. I made mistakes, but you, Matakoises Jessica, and now you're going to live with the consequences. I hung up and turned off my phone. By noon, Patricia called to tell me Thathdrix had requested an emergency meeting. Jessica's carefully planned strategy had collapsed in a single morning. The emergency hearing was scheduled for Jessica showed up with Rix, looking pale and defeated. Derek was nowhere to be seen. Patricia had confirmed that his wife in Denver had been notified of the affair and had frozen their joint accounts. Judge Martinez reviewed our evidence with growing disapproval. The photos, the financial records, the text messages about coaching the children against me. When she read the transcript of Jessica discussing how to document my neglect, her expression turned cold. Mrs. Reed, the judge said finally, this court takes parental alienation very seriously. The evidence suggests you've been deliberately undermining your children's relationship with their father while conducting an extramarital affair funded by your paramour. Jessica started to speak, but Rix put a hand on her arm to stop her. Temporary custody will be awarded to Mr. Reed, Judge Martinez continued. Mrs. Reed will have supervised visitation pending a full custody evaluation. This court also finds evidence of dissipation of marital assets and orders an immediate accounting of all undisclosed financial activity. Jessica moved out of the house staying with her sister while her world continued to crumble. Derek had disappeared entirely. His wife had filed for divorce in Denver, and his consulting business was under investigation for financial irregularities. The custody evaluation took 6 weeks, during which Tyler and Sophia lived with him full-time without Jessica's constant manipulation. They gradually opened up about the pressure they'd felt to criticize me, how confused they'd been about their mother's behavior, I knew something was wrong. Tyler told me one evening while we worked on his college applications. Mom kept asking weird questions about whether you love it is, whether you cared more about work than family. It felt like she wanted me to say bad things about you. Sophia was more direct. I saw her with that manance at the mall. They were holding hands. I didn't know what to do. The final divorce settlement was devastating for Jessica. She received minimal alimony, no claim to my pensioner, business assets, and only limited visation with the children. Ricks had withdrawn from the case after the judge sanctioned him for failing to investigate his client's misconduct. Jessica found work as a dental hygienist in Topeka, living in a small apartment and driving a used car. Her dreams of a wealthy new life with Derek had evaporated, along with her marriage. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I was promoted to project manager at Holligate Systems. The Henderson building was completed ahead of schedule and under budget, leading to 3 new contracts for the company. Tyler received his football scholarship to Kansas State. Sophia joined the debate team and started talking about studying law. Standing in the shadow of the building I'd helped create, watching me son throw passes in his first collegiate, I realized that some foundations are stronger than others. The ones built on honesty and hard work didn't crumble when the storms hit. They just get stronger. Jessica faced the consequences of her betrayal every day. Financially ruined, professionally humiliated, and estranged from the children she'd tried to turn against me. Derek's wife had taken everything in their divorce, and his busness never recovered from this. Sometimes the best revenge is simply letting people face the natural consequences of their choices.